A lot of times I think, Eddie, that folks hear financial freedom and they immediately think like, I have to figure out how to replace all my income in a year and go sit Mai Tais on the beach every day.
Yeah.
That is not reality, right? And I
No.
like to think of it as financial sum freedom. Like, how would
Yeah.
your life change if you had $1,000 a month coming in
Mhm.
consistently? Would you be able to do
Yeah.
one less shift? Would you be able to work one less day or whatever that may be? And then that's going to stack over time. And then before you know it, you've been able to create the life of your dreams that give you the optionality to go sit Mai Tais on the beach on a Tuesday.
We have an exciting show for you today. I have a great guest on, Dr. Alex. He is a Christian, a husband, a father, and a multifaceted real estate investor, heavy in the assisted living space, and Air Force veteran, family man, and a physician. Man, let's hear it. Like, talk about what got you into all these different things that you've been so amazing at.
What's up, Eddie? Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. Really excited to be here today. Really appreciate the time. Always love discussing with you. So I'm sure this will be a great conversation. Man, that's a lot. That's a big question. I mean, I think the things most important to me, Christian, husband, father, like those are the big things for sure, and the things that are most important. And through those things, that's really kind of shaped everything else in my life. And so I'm a family medicine physician by training. I love the opportunity to really build relationships with patients, really impact the whole family. And that often leads to faith discussions and the ability to minister in that capacity. And so I look at medicine as a way to serve others and really, really enjoy that aspect. And I've been really fortunate to kind of build up the real estate and entrepreneurship side to create some degree of financial freedom to now be able to practice medicine how I want to, which is a few days per week and in a direct primary care practice where I have a lot more time with patients and just grateful for that flexibility because that has led to more time to work on different passions that I have, spend more time with the family, and just practice medicine in a way that I think is much more beneficial for folks.
Absolutely. And, well, thank you all for your services and all the things you've done, first and foremost. The second, I've watched a lot of people that have got degrees before, and they create this identity around their job, around their degree. And did you fight with that at all? Like having that identity that, I'm a physician, I'm a doctor, or was you always centered in Christ? So, like, what was there a pattern to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm always centered in Christ. I think the white coat's heavy and the stethoscope is heavy. And I think a lot of times, I host a podcast called Physicians and Properties where I'm interviewing doctors and we've done like 130 episodes. And a lot of times folks do struggle with that white coat or kind of the weight of the stethoscope and the identity that goes behind that. And don't get me wrong, being a physician is like just such an honorable profession still and such a blessing. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity and the training and the trust that patients have in me. But it never was my full identity. My identity was always in Christ. And then I always had the realization of I want to be the best husband and father that I can be. To be completely honest, the kind of like system of medicine working, 5 days a week, always way more patients to see. There's folks that work way more than 5 days a week, but just these really, really long hours and extreme demand. I realized there's always going to be another patient to see. There's always going to be another administrative task. And every time I'm kind of saying yes to more and more and more, it's less time I'm going to get with my family. It's less time I'm going to get with those passions. And so to be frank, I hit a point of burnout. I mean, the pandemic was a really wild time. I was finishing up residency during that time frame. We saw a lot of death. I was in Florida, which didn't care about the pandemic at all. So there was a lot of death. There was a lot of inpatient, a lot of nights. My wife was pregnant. Like there were just a lot of things that all kind of compounded on itself and made me realize, I love what I do. I love practicing medicine, but like this isn't going to be everything for me. This isn't my full identity. And I've always been drawn to entrepreneurship. I've always been drawn to real estate. And so my mindset was essentially, kind of residency was like learning how to be a really good doctor, also learning a bit about financial freedom, financial literacy, white coat investor, rich dad, poor dad, bigger pockets, all those sort of things were really important for me. And I bought a home with a physician loan, no money down, that I knew I was going to turn into a rental as kind of a live and flip. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take, the last couple years of residency, 4 years active duty, wherever that duty station would be next, which ended up being Colorado Springs. And I'm just going to work really, really hard to create some degree of passive income so that I have some financial freedom. So then once my service commitment is up, then I can be, a little bit more free in that capacity. Luckily, it all worked out, but it's tough. I think doctors really struggle with that of like, am I letting my patients down? Am I letting the profession down by working part-time or working less or stopping practice in medicine as a whole? And I think it's kind of like the reverse of imposter syndrome. Like we all have imposter syndrome as a doctor coming in. I still have it. I've been practicing medicine now for a little bit. I think we have it the opposite too of like, hey, what's the world going to think of me if I go all in on my passion that may not be medicine,
Mm.
And so that's a really great question.
Yeah, man. Let's dig in. Let's unpack that right there. So, first, either you're better at hiding your gray, or you got better genes, or you just simply younger than I am. But these things are so good to figure out at a young age of realizing, hey, it sounds like you hit a ceiling. Like you hit this place that you were like, I know there, like you're always going to have another patient. Like you could never do enough. You took this oath, you did these things, you were serving that community, and you hit the ceiling. And you were like, all right, if I'm thinking forward, I would imagine, I'm just peering in your mind for a minute. You're thinking forward, you're like, what does retirement look like? You probably talked to older doctors, you knew people in the profession, you knew what their lifestyle was like, and you were like, okay, I got to start creating something. So let's unpack that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, there's massive amounts of burnout in medicine, and the pandemic was really kind of the cherry on top for that. I mean, if you think back to basically the whole world is not working, and then all the medical professions are really just busting it. We're laying out everything we have, putting everything on the line in an area or a time of some, maybe misinformation or kind of untrustworthy sources. And so there's just a lot that goes into the pandemic, and a lot that we could unpack there. But I remember, during that, there were like kind of multiple points that I was really thinking more so of like, I don't know if this is the life I want to live forever. And is this fair to, at the time, my future kids, because my wife was pregnant. And there one story that really stands out for me is I remember seeing this family. I had a family on my schedule that I was going to see three of their kids and for their well child checks or sports physicals or something like that. And the mom showed up about 30 minutes late. The appointments are only 20 minutes. And really, if they show up 10 minutes late, I'm pretty strict on a no-show policy because we're seeing 20, 22 patients per day. We can't just like see you when it's convenient. So I told my tech, I'm like, look, I can't see her. Like we can see her other two kids that she's kind of on time for, but the other kid's going to have to reschedule. She threw a huge fit. It was this whole huge deal. And ultimately I was like, look, that's fine. We'll just see him. Let's just get this done. They bring her back and they still have to fill out all the paperwork and do everything else. And so by the time I saw them and the time that I spent to see these kids and still try and provide the best care I possibly could, I got out of clinic so much later that I spent more time waiting for and seeing that family and those kids than I actually saw my own kids that day. And I was like, man, this is not fair to my kids. This is not fair to me. And this is not the father that I want to be. And so there were a lot of examples like that kind of came up over time that reinforced this idea of like, I have to do something different. I have to create some degree of freedom. And so really did that. I always knew early on that I was going to get into real estate investing. And that started when I was in residency. As I mentioned, that home I bought with a physician loan, no money down. It cost me $58 out of pocket. My family grew up. We didn't have much money. And I honestly remember being like, man, should I do this? Like $58, that's a lot of money, which is
Yeah,
hilarious. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you'll
But it's
spend more
true.
at Longhorn.
Exactly right, exactly
Yeah.
right. So, but I remember like having those thoughts, which is hilarious. But bought that house, turned it into long-term rental, really focused on like my financial literacy and education while also in residency. And then met one of my partners, Charlie Cameron, while we were both stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. We actually met through the Bigger Pockets forums and then connected since we were both stationed there. We started buying some short-term rentals. And then from there, it's like, you know how it goes. It's like, and all the investors listening, once you get that first check and you're like, wait a second, like I didn't work for this. Like I didn't have to see more patients for this money to come in. You get hooked. And so that was the same for me. And it wasn't much. I think it was like, the first distribution from our short-term rentals were like, I don't know, $370. But I was like, this is awesome. We're
Yeah.
loaded, baby. Let's go. And
Yeah.
from there, it just kept stacking. And then throughout time, kind of invested in a little bit of everything because I do have shiny object syndrome, which I can give you my take on how I feel about shiny object syndrome. But I invested in a little bit of everything. ultimately came to really loving assisted living and senior living. And so found my, met my other partner, Luke, through a mastermind that Charlie, myself, and Luke are in called the War Room, which is for military members. And in that mastermind, Luke was like, hey guys, I'm going to start investing in assisted living. And we talked a lot about it. We partnered together. And since then, it's been off to the races. We can talk way more about that. There's probably a lot to unpack right there as well. But that's kind of what the journey looked like going forward.
Well, I appreciate that, man, because the journey is so important, and I like hearing about the journey, and this is the reason why. I've I've watched so many people that couldn't attach to anything because there wasn't somebody in that same profession. He did that, but he's a physician, or that person did that because, like, there's all these excuses that come out. So I love interviewing people here on this podcast and getting it out here in the world, because there is so many people. As long as you remove the identity from the job, you can literally do anything as long as you think outside the box. And to be honest, I think we all have to have some sort of shiny object syndrome to truly figure out what we're passionate about and what we enjoy when we're younger. Because if we don't, if we stick with one thing at a young age, it seems like we always question, man, what would have been like if I would have invested in billboards or in gold and silver? And you hear people like Robert Kiyosaki, Ken McElroy, and you hear them crush it in these certain sectors. And you think, man, I should jump over and do that. But at the end of the day, if you pick one thing and you're really truly passionate about it, like you're solving a problem, you can make a whole lot of money doing that. And, for you, it sounds like the number one reason, which is, I think, the right way, is you were trying to get your time freedom. It's ultimately what you're chasing. What you were investing in all these different things, but you chose one that would give you the most time freedom, buy back your time, more time with the family. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep, you're exactly right. Yeah, a couple key points there. I mean, so when I got out of the Air Force in June, I had some terminal leave, and then we just decided to take some leave, and so or just take some time off. And so basically, from middle of April until August 1st, I didn't work at all. We did a month long camping trip. We have a little camper. We went to Grand Tetons Yellowstone Glacier, had the best time with the family. We went to Europe for a month. It was like this is what we worked so hard for, and it was just the most incredible summer I could ever ask for, and I'm so grateful for that. To hit the shiny object point, though, Eddie, I think is really important and where folks get lost. And you said this very, very well. I like to think of it as like going to an ice cream shop, and you walk into that ice cream shop, and each one of those different asset classes are a different flavor of ice cream, and you don't know what you want to eat first. So you're like, hey, can I have a sample of Rocky Road, for example? Maybe that's a mobile home park. Can I have an example of chocolate chip cookie dough? That's assisted living. That's my favorite. And vanilla, et cetera. You try these free samples. Same thing goes for investing, right? It's totally okay to be like, I don't know what I'm interested in. Maybe I'm going to invest a little bit as a limited partner in this multifamily deal to see if I like multifamily, and a little bit of mobile home park, and a little bit in assisted living. And then you figure out, hey, what flavor do I really want to eat? That's when you're putting the scoops on top, right? And so that's what I did. And I think that's the appropriate way to do it. Now, I think where you get in trouble is when, hey, I figured out that I love chocolate chip cookie dough, which is assisted living, and I'm very passionate about it, and I am doing well from an investment perspective. I need to just be putting on more scoops. But then it's exactly as you mentioned, like, hey, that next flavor, that new flavor comes out and looks appetizing. If I stop eating my flavor and go to that next one, that's when problems come up, because shiny object syndrome can then become an issue where you're not putting your focus on that one thing. And I would be lying if I said I don't still have it. I see, yeah, like you mentioned, I see these things all the time. Like, oh man, that sounds awesome. Or someone comes and they're like, hey, can you help me raise money for this deal? I'm like, oh, I don't, like, that's not really the plan, but that'd be cool. It'd be really awesome to like have some ownership in this other asset class. So I think you have to figure out what are your goals as financially, what are your goals relationally, what are your goals in life, and like how can you merge that all together like a vivid vision, and then figure out how I can reverse engineer that going backwards, because you can do it in any asset class, right? There's a million ways to make $1,000,000, but if it's not something that you love and you're passionate about, it's going to be a lot harder to do.
Absolutely. And that's really the path. And once you do learn like the ins and outs, because Anybody that tell you they haven't failed hasn't been in the market long enough, or they just simply are having trouble telling you the truth. And, a lot of the times I won't invest with somebody or help someone out in certain aspects of joint ventures if they have not failed, because that means they haven't went through something yet. And a lot of the times we will go through an asset class and we'll think we know everything about it until it goes through a cycle. And then that cycle will expose certain risks. Like multifamily has seen all the different pressures, especially in Latino demographic areas. We've seen lots of pressure from that. Then you want to jump to the next shiny thing because you heard that's cash flowing well. But I highly, highly recommend that somebody stays in the fight until they conquer the fight, because I've seen a lot of people like they jump. And so my question leading up to this, have you seen certain things that you had to learn through in the assisted living?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're 100% correct. Like you jump to that next thing and then you're going to hit that same wall and you got to figure out, am I going to fight or am I going to flight? And you're going to have to fight at some point. So figure out what you want to be passionate about, what you want to fight about. Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it too. We got started in the assisted living world doing what's called the lease to operator model. And I'd like to think that we coined that. I don't know if we did, but basically what we do is we would buy a house, renovate it to an assisted living home, or purchase one that was previously operating, lease that out to an operator on a commercial lease. Then they run all the day-to-day care of the residents. Everyone who's listening to this who has some experience can already see the major pain point that is the operator, right? And so we got burned on one house with a couple operators. That was a sober living home, in full transparency, not assisted living. But we got burned with an operator who, like, hey, clearly their heart wasn't in it, and they were just chasing after the money. And Arizona had some fraud that happened. Luckily, not in our house, but in some similar houses. So they just paused all the payments that were coming through the state. And
Mm,
obviously, we were put in between a rock and a hard place because now the operator is not making any money to then pay the lease. So we had to evict them. So that's one. We're dealing right now with a lawsuit with another operator. First lawsuit we've ever been in. It's a deal we have investors in. The operator just kind of stopped communicating with us and stopped paying us, and we're just paying people out of our pocket, paying our investors the returns out of our pocket until the situation gets solved. And I can't say a whole lot about it, but you're going to always come into different situations where you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to learn things, you're going to have to fight, you're going to have to figure things out. And if you keep your eyes focused on the goal and focused on your investors and treating them well and treating them how you want to be treated, that's the way to get through it. You just have to keep fighting and go from there. So things are going to come up. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, as
oh,
they
yeah,
say.
absolutely. And I really appreciate the way you've responded to that trouble, because so many people, especially when they have an LLC, or, that they have a loan that is really non-recourse, and they just choose to just whoop, we're out, and not communicate with investors anymore. So thank you for doing that, because what I've found is I love to meet and be around real integrity operators, people that have
Mhm.
integrity, that even when they're not looking, you're still doing the right thing and you're showing up. It's how you respond to problems that is really what this world needs more. And just to respond with positivity and caring and just do the right thing. Like at the end of the day, just do the right thing. That's all there is. So thank you for that. So let's jump to, if there was one thing you could go back and tell your younger self, I think I might have a guess. What would that one thing be that you would say, man, if I could rewind 10 years from now, like 10 years later, what's the one thing you would change?
Oh man, there's a lot of things that come top of mind. The one that you're thinking of probably is like focus on assisted living a lot sooner without bouncing around. So that would be one. That's the easy answer. The one I would say is one that you probably don't expect was we were investing in short term rentals early on, and I was stationed down in the Panhandle of Florida, and my wife and I were talking with this older couple who owned a townhouse in Destin, Florida, and there's this point called Noriego Point that is this like beautiful beach, and it's kind of right in the marina, in the harbor, and Crab Island. It's gorgeous, and they wanted to sell for sale by owner, and we talked with them. We went and toured it. It was an incredible investment. They were selling this townhouse. It was 2 bedroom, 2 bath, like 100 yards from the beach, not beachfront, but 100 yards of a walk to get there on the sand for 240,000. And this is when we were first getting started. And we talked ourselves out of the deal. We're like, oh, what about insurance? What about this? What if a hurricane hits? Whatever. And we didn't buy it. And now that thing's worth like $850,000. And it would have been printing cash flow the entire time. And it would have been an incredible property to go back and bring our family to and just enjoy being at the beach. So I think the big kind of broad answer to that is like the willingness to take action earlier on and trust that, like, if the fundamentals are there, if the numbers make sense, if I've done the due diligence, it's all going to work out, right? Like it doesn't matter if insurance was more, which it would have been, but the thing would have made a lot more cash flow because it's right there on the beach and it would have been rented out as a short-term rental. So that, like, the numbers and the fundamentals are there. And I think a lot of times people, including physicians, because we have this like analytical mind, we want to know all the information, we want to have all the data. We're really good at sifting through that and making decisions. But if we don't have all that, we're kind of like, no, I'm kind of locked up, I'm not sure. And we get that analysis paralysis. And a lot of folks get stuck there and never get started in whatever asset class that is. And so I think for me, it would be like just, having that courage to get started a little bit earlier, take some bigger swings when I was younger, because they probably were going to work out. And there's been
Yep.
no hurricanes, knock on wood, and
Yeah,
everything's been fine. So
of
that's
course.
just how it goes. Yep.
Well, my partner is very, very analytical. He's not a physician, but he has to have every single thing like completely put in place, projected out, and everything else. And I'm a trailblazing entrepreneur. Let's go take off running, fall down, get scraped up, brush yourself off. Let's keep going, learn from that. Like, just go out and fail fast. And to reevaluate that now, your hindsight being 2020, would you say that today, with the education you have, you could have de-risked that investment by underwriting certain things, understanding certain things, that you could have protected it with insurance, full replacement costs?
Oh yeah, 100%. And there's, probably a dozen deals that would have been, in hindsight, home runs, and it could have completely de-risked and be a much different position now. But I look back and I don't think I would have changed anything. Incredibly grateful to be where I am right now, and grateful for everything that transpired and what I learned from those opportunities. But yeah, it would have been completely de-risked and a lot more cash flow and a completely different environment right now. But that's just how it goes. And for folks who are sitting here listening to this, I think the big takeaway is like, be willing to take some imperfect action and get started, and be okay with the possibility of failing. And I look back in hindsight too, it's like that house would have probably cost me, I mean, interest rates are really low at the time, I don't know, maybe $1,200 a month for mortgage and taxes, and insurance maybe a couple $100s a month. Okay, so like say $1,500 a month all in for this property. In reality, I could have just worked like one extra shift a month to pay that property, if it created no money whatsoever, if there was no rental income coming in. So like really there was nothing to be scared of. And I think a lot of times we got to take a step back and look at, okay, worst case scenario, I have to cover mortgage, taxes, insurance for this property. What does that look like? And I understand I'm a physician and fortunate that that's a higher income position and profession. But like a lot of folks could do something similar as well if that really, came to be an issue.
You said something right there that I really want the listeners to just hone in on for a second. So you said the magic ticket. Looking at this now, you realize that you had resources that was already in place, and that even if it went the worst it could go, you could use your resources, which would have been pick up another shift, do another thing, that you could have covered that. And that would have been the part that would have de-risked that fear enough that you would have moved forward. And it would have been an amazing outcome, because you paid $250 for it. Now it's worth $800, plus the income that you would have made over that time, plus the refis that you would have yanked out of it. And then
Yep. The
let's be
tax
honest,
benefits.
the tax benefits, the biggest benefit though, is the experience of being able to take your family and your friends to an amazing destination that you are owning, and the cash flows.
Yep. 100%.
So
100%.
that's the one I want the listeners to think about, because so many times the worst thing I ever see is people say, I can't. And that, just stop for a minute and go, hold on. Maybe I can if we work another shift, like worst case scenario, like it seems like a lot of analytical people, maybe you can answer this better than I can. They stack these things up that they cannot see on the other side. When they're like, "Oh, well, if I just picked up one shift, you'd be able to see over the wall." And you're like, all right, so maybe I could take this off the plate and you could jump over that hurdle.
Yeah, I think physicians, especially, we don't have that financial literacy early on, so that's a big component to it. Is it's not taught in med school, it's not taught in residency. Doctors don't really know what to do with their money, and there's been situations where doctors have been taken advantage of because they do have that higher income, and you go from making peanuts as a resident to all of a sudden like your income's increased dramatically as an attending physician, and then you almost feel like you're owed something, right? And that's what a lot of doctors struggle with is they go from residency working 80 plus hours per week, making 40, $50,000 a year to, okay, now I'm an attending physician. And depending on whatever specialty I'm in, I'm making, multiple hundreds of $1,000s per year working 40, 50 hours a week. And you feel like, okay, I put in all this work and effort. Now it's time for me to buy the mansion, buy the Tesla, get the Rolex, all those sorts of things. And so then they dig their hole even deeper. Oh, not to mention typically hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. And they dig their hole a lot deeper. And so I think in my ask for any high income professional, but also physicians are to think about that early on of like, hey, let's set that financial foundation really early on. I think the best way to do that is a physician and a resident doctor is house hacking, but set that financial foundation really early on. And then avoid that lifestyle creep. And then you have this extra income that you're then able to invest in these deals and get started so much sooner. And then as those checks are coming in, as that passive income is coming in, those walls are starting to come down, or those bricks of the wall are coming down. You're able to see more clearly. And a lot of times I think, Eddie, that folks hear financial freedom and they immediately think like, I have to figure out how to replace all my income in a year and go sit Mai Tais on the beach every day.
Yeah.
That is not reality, right? And I like to think of it as financial sum freedom, right? Like, how would your life change if you had $1,000 a month coming in consistently? Would you be able to do one less shift? Would you be able to work one less day, or whatever that may be? And then that's going to stack over time. And then before you know it, you've been able to create the life of your dreams that give you the optionality to go sit Mai Tais on the beach on a Tuesday. But a lot of us are type A driven people, and we're probably going to work to some degree forever. But we want to work on what we want, when we want, where we want, with who we want. And that's the big thing that we're chasing.
Well, you know, so true. Such wise words. I mean, definitely, guys, rewind that part, listen to it again. I was addicted to figuring this thing out. I was addicted to the financial literacy to figure out what this really looks like, because I feel that your greatest ability is your availability to your family. Now, that's
I
not
love
how
that.
I started. I went 13 years working over 100 hours a week, 80 to 100 hours a week. Like, completely got it wrong. Like, there was no higher trade I could make. I had capped the income, I had capped the amount of hours. Like, this was the ceiling. And then I thought, okay, there's got to be a different way. I was able to retire from corporate America at age 36. I still don't own a Tesla. I don't own a Ferrari. I don't own a mansion. These are the things that I didn't care so much about. Don't get me wrong. I had plenty of material things. I won in that department, but I was trading all my income just for material possessions. And it snapped in me, and I was like, all I really truly want is my ability to go to the gym when I want, my ability to buy the healthy foods that keep me healthy and nourished, my ability to be with my family. And I got addicted to figuring out, how do I do this? So you are really close, or you have crossed that proverbial finish line of this, marching towards this financial freedom. You're down to just a couple days a week. You've replaced a lot of your income with some passive income. Like you said, you don't have to totally replace it. But you found the fine line. What are some books or some podcasts that you would recommend to the listeners that you kind of applied to your life? Because I'm sure you didn't bump your way through this. Like, you probably had a mentor, there was a book you continued to read, a podcast. Where was those resources?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just want to say one thing to kind of piggyback onto that, and then I'll gladly hit those resources because there was a lot of them, and I'm really grateful for them. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Eddie. It's, I had a realization that, the only people who are going to care that I'm working at the hospital late or working at the clinic late or seeing another patient is going to be my wife and is going to be my kids. Right. And those are the people that I would have to answer to. The patients aren't going to care that I'm there later. The administrative staff's not going to care really that I'm there later. It's going to be my wife and my kids. And those are the people that I'm going to have to answer to. And so I had that realization early on, and all of us in any profession have felt that weight of there's always something else that we could be doing in our work, and you have to realize that every time you're saying yes to something else at work, you're saying no to your family. And I didn't want to be saying no to my family, and so that was something that always kind of drove me and motivated me, similar to you as well. And my dad worked really hard, blue collar. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but he worked really hard, and he was always at all of our sporting events. He would wake up at 3:30 in the morning, drive like hour and a half to work in DC traffic to work in Arlington, Virginia. And in that way, he was able to get off at 2:30 so that he could get to the high school in time to see all of our baseball games. And I don't remember a sporting event that he was not at. I don't remember an event that he was not at. Like, dad was always there. And regardless of the material possessions, which we didn't have, I knew that he was there. I knew he was going to show up. And that was like what was most important. And I knew that is something that I wanted to do for my kids. So that's the big driver there from that perspective. But to hit on the resources, biggest things for me, honestly, have been mastermind communities. I joined the War Room Mastermind, which is that mastermind I mentioned for veterans, gosh, about 6 years ago now. And I think being in the right room with people who are doing things way bigger than you could ever imagine makes it seem real to you. And then relationships and networking just leads to so much opportunity down the road. So masterminds, I think, are really important. I'm also in the Action Academy Mastermind as well, with Brian Lubin. That's been an amazing resource, absolutely incredible community and people. Podcast wise, I listened to a lot of Bigger Pockets back in the day. I haven't listened to it recently, to be completely honest. Action Academy podcast, The White Coat Investor for Physicians. It's pretty dry, but that was helpful. The Founders podcast with David Sinra has been a big one as well. There's lots of them. I'm a big podcast guy. So I think you can learn a lot there and learn a lot on the go. But I really love to read. And every night I make it an effort to read 30 minutes to an hour. And I read the Bible every morning and a Christian book every morning, and then read either business or something I enjoy in the evenings. Some big books for me: Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's a big mindset one for everyone. Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. Dr. Tom Burns is a good one for physicians. The Bigger Pockets books on real estate, especially like the Burr book, Out of State Property Investing, the book on property investing, all those are really good to lay those frameworks and foundations for real estate investing as a whole. Those are the ones that come top of mind. But there's so much education and information out there. But I would encourage folks to think about it's the implementation in the community that you really need. The information's there, but that implementation, that accountability, that community is what's really important, and is really going to help you expedite your growth.
Absolutely. 2 words of advice, and I want you to piggyback on this. Just correct me if I'm wrong. We can all go down the road of 100 different YouTube channels and podcasts and everything else. Use that shiny object syndrome to figure out what you're passionate about, what you like, and then pick that author, pick that podcast, and go deep. And don't really go wide, but go deep on that subject and soak that up and learn everything you can and just start. Because I've been guilty of reading 46 books and audiobooks, 46 different ones in 1 year. It expanded my vocabulary, and it definitely expanded my mind, but I implemented zero. I could have read one book on one subject and went deep in like every single 30-minute day, took notes and applied it directly to my life, and it would have changed. So
I agree.
would you
If you're
agree?
not learning, if you're not learning or growing, you're dying. And I think that we're in that culture of like, oh, how many books can I read per year? And let me post that on my Goodreads or share it on my social media. Sure, that's great. Like, learning is helpful and I think really important. But the other key part is putting some skin in the game and taking action. And I think that is where communities are really helpful, because it costs money to be in a mastermind community, and it should, right? If I have no skin in the game and I join this free community, what's going to happen is everyone's going to meet for like 1 or 2 weeks, and then they're going to get busy, and then no one's going to meet anymore, and then it's just going to fall apart, right? And so that's where putting some money in, putting some skin in the game, and then surrounding yourself with a like-minded community that's going to help you grow, build you up, hold you accountable, and help you to not make the stupid mistakes that they made already can be so valuable. And so, yeah, I agree. I think it's fine to get that breadth of knowledge. It's fine to lay that foundation, but as you start building, focus on that one thing and really dive into that. But that's going to require you to take action, get skin in the game, and or invest in that property or invest in that opportunity to really learn the nuts and bolts.
Would you recommend that one of the best ways to start your investing journey would be to a limited partner first?
I think it's a great way to do it. I think it's a great way to do it because you start to learn the mechanics, right? You start to learn about what are you looking for in a deal? What are you looking for in the operator or in the general partnership team? How do you analyze that? And it's a great opportunity to ask a lot of questions and get, you need to get that answer. You need to do that due diligence to figure out if that's an opportunity you want to invest your hard-earned capital in, but it also gives you a lot of education and knowledge along the way. And then, like I mentioned before, you can kind of figure out like, well, is this an asset class that I like? Do I want to keep deploying capital in this way? And the other key part too is to figure out like, okay, well, how active or passive do I want to be in terms of my investments? Do I want to be a general partner? Do I want to like own the whole thing, or do I want to do a limited partner arrangement and invest with someone like you, Eddie, and I'll get a check in the mail or that direct deposit and have a little bit less active involvement? So I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely. We'll move into the fire round. We'll start wrapping it up. So, 3 questions just off the top of your head. What is the number one book that changed your life?
The Bible.
Boom. Amen. Man, I wish more people would say that, because I'll tell you what, I've read tons and tons of self help books, and there is no better self help book than the Bible, in my opinion. Whether you're applying family principles, biblical principles, stewardship, it's all in there, and it apply to every season of your life, every single time.
Yep, absolutely. And it's so cool how different seasons of life you get something out different out of that same passage and whatever it may be. And I'll tell you something I'm doing right now, Eddie, that's I think really cool. I actually first heard the idea from Brandon Turner. I don't know if he's still doing it, but I bought a Bible for my son Jack. He's 5. I started doing this when he was 3.5, but bought a Bible. It's a journaling Bible, so it's got some big margins. And every day I'll read a chapter and I will pull up a bunch of different commentaries and kind of look through the lens of like, what wisdom do I want to leave my son based off this biblical passage? And I write that in the margins for him. And it's going to take, probably another 2 to 2.5 years before I finish this whole Bible for him. But my goal is, when he turns 10, I'm going to give him this Bible, and he's going to have an entire Bible that's filled with biblical wisdom, maybe some wisdom from dad, and some key insights from some key Christian thinkers. And that's all going to be there for him. And then I'm going to, once I finish that one, start working on one for my youngest son, Owen, who's 18 months. But it's just been so cool to think through it in that lens. And I've gained so much as a father too, of like thinking through, okay, let me read this passage and think through what I really want my son to get out of this. How is he going to be a godly man going forward? How is he going to become the man that I hope that he becomes and that the Lord's going to help him become? So anyways, yeah, I can't foot stomp that enough of the power of like just getting in the word every morning.
That is, I think I'm at 150 days in a row on YouVersion.
It's awesome.
And that's what I do in the morning. Read. I got a Bible plan that I'm doing for this whole year. That's what I do before I go to sleep at night. And I'm in the Word all the time. So absolutely. Favorite quote?
Oh, man, I should have prepared. I don't have one that really jumps top of mind. I'm going to be honest. I think I would say right now, really one that I think about for the listener is just be willing to take imperfect action. I don't know who said that or if I did, but I think that that's just really important, and I think something to work through all steps of life as I'm continuing to see through entrepreneurship that like it's important to make the decision and be willing to take imperfect action instead of just be waiting for all the information and details. Sorry, I don't have a better one.
No, dude, that is the best one. I mean, it really is. Last one. Are you using AI, and how are you applying it to your business or life?
Absolutely. AI is an incredible tool. I'm not super tech savvy, but I do use it all the time. We're focused largely in the assisted living space. So, from a business perspective, we have a mastermind called the Row Room. We built out like a whole GPT of all our podcast transcripts, call transcripts, everything we've like ever read in assisted living, any assisted living information data, all that stuff. When we built it into a GPT, I use that every day, and we give access to that to our mastermind members. So that's been really, really cool. I just learned this. This is a cool AI trick, and maybe I'm really far behind the curve. I live and die by my Google Calendar and love keeping that updated. And I just learned in Gemini that if you have like a list of dates, like for example, if I have a list of my clinic dates and where I'm working, I can just copy and paste that into Gemini and say, add this to my calendar, and boom, it's all automatically done for me. So hopefully that's a value add to folks as well. I just learned that the other day.
It's a value add to me, man. Thank you. I got
Awesome.
so many
Yeah.
things that's going on. I've got the Jesse Itzler great big calendar, and I'm
Yeah.
guilty of not transferring that dude to my Google Calendar. So I say yes to something sometimes, and it's like, oh man, well I got that. Nope, can't do it. Then I
Yeah.
look like a
You
jerk.
could probably take a picture of that, Eddie. Let me know if this works. If you could take a picture of that, upload that to Gemini, and it automatically fill it out. That'd be
We're gonna
crazy cool.
we're gonna give that a try. I'll let you know,
There you
man.
go.
Where can people find you?
Absolutely. Well, if you're interested in assisted living at all, you can find us through the ralroom.com, the ralroom.com. We have a bunch of resources there. We do a weekly podcast. We do also have a mastermind community, and there's a free 10-step guide for assisted living there. So if you're interested, that'd be a great place, the ralroom.com. Otherwise, I'm on all the social media channels except for X and TikTok. But if you search for my name, Dr. Alex Schloe, in real estate or assisted living, you'll be able to find me, and happy to connect with anyone and help out anybody. So really appreciate your time today, Eddie. Thanks for this opportunity.
And this has been amazing. Thank you guys so much. If you do one favor for me, please, by all means, hit the like and subscribe button and share this with somebody else so we can help more people. Have a great day, everyone.